You tell me when you're ready, Jen. We're good? Okay. All right, we're going to open the Hood River City Council meeting for June 27th at 6:03. And just remind people to turn off or silence your cell phones during the meeting. And then we're going to do the land acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance. So as we meet tonight, let us all remember that today we are stewards of land that has been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years, before the recent arrival of the European heritage dominant culture. We honor this land's ancestors as we go about our business today. Okay, we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, we've got several different things going on tonight, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to adjourn, or we're not going to adjourn, we're going to recess the Hood River City Council meeting. And then we're going to open the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency special meeting at 6:05 and call that to order. We have business from the audience. And Dustin, we've done all our public comment on the agenda item Heights Streetscape. So if someone wants to talk about that, they should do it now in business from the audience. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, great. All right. So I do have some people that are signed up to speak during the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. And those would be Megan Ramey and a few others.
I can go ahead, but is there any way they're like trying to get here? They can come in.
Go ahead, whoever's here that wants to go, and then we are going to go ahead and start the rest of the meeting.
Yeah.
And then if they can get here by the time we finish, I don't think it's a problem for the little kids to.
They should be
testify.
like 5-10 minutes late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Megan.
So 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I timed myself. Okay. Megan Ramey, 1886 Belmont, coming to you as the bike train conductor. I've taught 281 kids how to ride bikes, including law and etiquette at May Street Elementary in Mid-Valley. These were 5th graders and kindergartners. There was many moments, like a 5th grader named Miguel at Mid-Valley, who didn't even know how to balance when we started out. And 3 days later, he had just gotten pedaling, and it was like fireworks going off. And you could see the gears turning. Such a powerful moment. My second favorite part was asking which kids needed a bike at home. So they would raise their hands, and I would get to use my volunteer work with Anson's to get them bikes. And so 40 kids in Hood River and parents have gotten bikes. One of those was a single mother who doesn't have a car and uses the bike now to get to catering work. 12 kids at Mid-Valley have received bikes. 22 kids are waiting. So we process bikes as they come in. The PE teacher, Stephanie Perkins, said that the kindergartner named Mateo, his mom, came in and she was crying when she got a bike for her son. We've tuned up 20 bikes, including a homeless man in a wheelchair. He was riding around without rubber on his wheels, and you can imagine how difficult that was. And so Kyle put 2 new tires on his wheelchair, and now he's much more mobile. So walking and rolling education and access to bikes are major barriers that will be tackled now that Hood River School District received the Safe Routes Education grants. I'm so proud of the city and the school district for making that happen. Thanks to the superintendent Polkinghorn, principals, your staff member Jonathan, working tirelessly with me on this, and then the police and fire departments for supporting the application. But so now is the biggest barrier, the safe infrastructure. I'm so pleased to see design alternative number 3 recommended to move forward. It most closely aligns with the Safe Routes to School plan recommendations, specifically the two-way cycle tracks on 12th and May Street. Other cities have discovered that these two-way cycle tracks are a win-win-win because they provide a safe place for kids to roll, seniors or mobility challenged, and emergency vehicle access. I recommend a width of no less than 12 feet for these cycle tracks to allow side-by-side riding between caregiver and child, and for safe passing, considering the proliferation of e-bikes, which is a topic for a whole nother city council meeting. I brought a few of my friends to help me out with this next part, but in essence, I have 54 signed postcards, 2 in Spanish, from residents of the Heights, mostly families. Of the check boxes on the postcard, 48 residents want a bike mobility lane, 46 tied for safe routes to school and safe crossings respectively, 41 to connect the neighborhood, 39 to support local businesses, and 34 for people places. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
You're like staging out there, but I can call Amelia up. So Amelia is on my bike train. She rides from Seavercop, and she's reading. These are testimonials not written by the kids, but written by residents in the neighborhood.
Okay, thanks.
For my blind daughters who walked between May Street School and Hood River Middle School and balance all other values.
Thank you, Amelia.
This one says,
Your name?
Oh,
Go ahead with your name
I'm
first.
Ellie Giordano. And this says, I ride my bike for transportation. And right now, 12th and 13th Street is frightening. I have to patchwork the route. I ride the sidewalks. Warren rides an e-bike, 77 years old.
Yeah, 77-year-old.
Thank you.
I'm Rachel. Kid friendly, not get hit by cars when walking across 12 Rosa Gravos behind Rosars.
Thank you.
I'm Freda Nelson. Why do I want a better Heights? Kids can walk and ride safely between schools, park, and pool. Friends have plenty of playdates. Slow traffic to make strolling and shopping more inviting.
I'm Annika. Raising our kids with a safe town to get around using healthy methods, biking and walking is important. We also love the Heights to avoid tourist crowds in other parts of town. Tegan on Prospect Street. I would love to see a design that creates fluidity for walking as well as biking. It is right now. As it is right now, it feels unsafe and disconnected.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Arlie Sparling, and this card says, I want to be able to go from my house to other places, school, businesses, and friends' houses without having to play Frogger.
Thank you.
My name's Kyle. Hi, 1886 Belmont. I have the 3 and 1s in Spanish. I may not read it. I'll go as fast as I can. Okay. This one doesn't have a name on it. It says, to experience a better life, more walkability without being fearful of my children crossing 12th and getting hit. Oh, this is from Jen Peterson, 1031 Pine Street. Last one, Zion's confidence has soared with his being able to take the bike train the last few weeks of school, even with a car accident incident. It has done wonders for his self-confidence. This is from Melissa Ibarra, Sister Cup. So thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else?
I have more written that I'll send to you.
Okay.
There's like 54 cards, but I pulled out
Okay.
the ones that were most relevant, but thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Megan. All right, that's all the business from the audience for the Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Thanks for coming and talking to us, you guys.
Yeah, appreciate you
That was
taking the
great.
time to come down here.
You're welcome. Ice cream time.
All right, we have a consent agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from June 13th.
I would move we approve the minutes from June 13th.
I will second that.
So Megan has made the motion to approve the minutes from June 13th, and Mark has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chapman, aye. So that was Gladys and Tim, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and Chrissy. I can't see anyone, so. And is there anybody else?
Gary and I.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, everyone, chair votes aye. All right, regular business item, the Heights Streetscape Phase 2 summary. Dustin.
Thank you all. Tonight with us, we have Nathan Plansky and Alex Dupe from MIG APG Portland and Seattle. I believe we also have John Bosket from DKS Associates joining us. We're your Heights project team. And the matter you have before you tonight is a summary of the phase 2 work that has been performed. Nathan is going to has a presentation prepared and will walk us through this. The materials in your packet include a technical summary, which you've seen before in the past. It's really an evaluation from the project team from a technical perspective. You also have a traffic analysis performed by DKS, roundabout analysis performed by a third-party subject matter expert, Structure Point from Indianapolis. They were brought in to look at some of the intersection analysis. That's what they do all across the United States and the world. They build roundabouts. So they have some materials in your packet, and then we also have materials from your open house that we held on April 22nd and 23rd. All the comments distilled as best we could from images. We had approximately 300 people attend. And then responses from your survey, online survey are included, where we had about 1,200 reaches and 300 more completed surveys, of which we had, I believe, 31 completed in Spanish, which was, if you recall the first phase of the project, we had a survey, we had 0 responses in Spanish. So really, we're excited to see some forward motion in that. And I think that's testament to the efforts of our team to really get out there and do outreach. We were on the radio, we're in public, we walked the streets for the businesses, we had engagement through the business community. I think we made appearance on Radio Tierra. We were on with Mark Bailey. We had a series of online exposures through social media, newsletter. I believe we were in the paper. I think we had every media except TV, which is not really quite accessible to us yet. But before I steal all the points, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan. And Nathan, I think you have some presentations and slides to share to take us through the materials that the board has.
Yeah, thank you, Dustin, and thank you, board members. We're really excited to kind of share kind of our findings from the last, I guess, year and a half of work with the city staff, the board, the advisory committee, and the community of Hood River. A lot of great information has been shared, and I think Dustin is kind of project manager on the city side, and all the folks on the board and advisory committee did a fantastic job to help get turnout for the public open house that happened in late April on the 22nd, 23rd. So kind of first off, thank you for all of your efforts to communicate with community members and peers and family members. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and walk through kind of brief summary. Okay. As Dustin mentioned, in your packet tonight, it was 300 plus pages of materials kind of attached as appendices. A bulk of that was the technical evaluation that was completed by the project team in February. And so we want to kind of touch on some highlights from that. We also then want to go over kind of the findings from the community outreach and kind of feedback that happened in late April at the open house, as well as the online survey, which was open for 4 weeks from late April through kind of the middle of May. And then kind of lastly, having gone through all of that information, kind of the project team has gone through and made a recommendation for developing a preferred design for the streets and intersections in the Heights. So kind of as a reminder where we are in the project process. When we started this early last year in phase one, we were meeting with kind of the board and the community to identify project goals. Those goals were established at the end of phase one. We did due diligence. We kind of had a really good understanding of the context, and our last kind of 9 or 10 months has really been focused on developing the design concepts, preliminary design concepts, evaluation criteria to rate those concepts based on the project goals that the board confirmed at the end of phase one, and then meeting with the community to get public feedback. At the end of this phase, we've made our project kind of team's recommendation and kind of looking to have kind of discussion and feedback from the board tonight. The next phase of this project will be developing the preferred design for a kind of a final plan, and that will include implementation considerations as well as kind of costing to kind of look forward and see how future improvements get implemented. As a quick reminder on the design concepts, as I'll probably refer to them as concept 1, concept 2, and there's a typo there, I apologize, concept 3 for the hybrid. But concept 1 looked at taking the circulation along 12th and 13th that exists today and changing it to two-way traffic and adding bike facilities on 13th Street. Concept 2 looked to reduce the two-way street or the 2 lanes of traffic on 12th and 13th to 1 lane of traffic, and provided a shared use path on 13th or 12th, 13th. And then concept 3, the hybrid, combined kind of some of the key aspects of these and kind of really started to prioritize the movement of vehicles on 13th, maintaining 2 travel lanes with 2-way traffic and adding a turn lane, and then converting 12th to a 1-way traffic with angle parking and a 2-way cycle track. What I haven't mentioned are the intersection configurations at the key intersections for each of these concepts. One of the things that as we worked with DKS, our traffic engineer, that all of these concepts can work with a roundabout or a traffic signal. And so while the concepts that were presented to the community had specific intersection improvements that were shown, there is ability to kind of pick that depending on kind of the preferred design for the future. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more. As a reminder, from a regulatory standpoint, 12th and 13th today are ODOT state highway. So ODOT maintains the roadway from curb to curb. The city maintains the sidewalks, the drainage infrastructure, lighting, handles the snow removal. One of the things that I think is important to recognize that in the future, if the streets change from their current one-way configuration, it is possible that one of the streets would be sort of redundant to the other and provide two-way traffic or travel in the same direction as the other street. And in that case, ODOT has mentioned that they don't see the need to kind of maintain kind of regulation over both streets and could see that as potentially becoming a city street in the future. And so as we think about that and kind of talk about the different design concepts, just want to remind folks on, these are ODOT corridors, and in the future, that's to be determined. So going back to the technical evaluation, each of the design concepts rated relatively well with their project goals, and I think that aligns with the efforts of the project team trying to develop different design concepts that aligned with project goals and needs. As we dug in, we being the project team dug into the technical evaluation, we really looked closely at kind of individual differences between the design concepts and even looking at differences between 12th and 13th, recognizing that the different streets function differently in the different concepts. From that technical evaluation, we had identified sort of 5 key differences for further discussion with the community. And these are things that we were really wanted to focus on talking about at the public open house and with the community members, as well as looking at the online survey, getting feedback. And so number one is kind of confirming the level of congestion that can be tolerated. One thing that's important to realize is that in each of the future scenarios, there'll be more traffic congestion than there is today. The design of key intersections also play a critical role in the function, both in terms of how well cars move through the intersections in each design concept, but also the comfort, access, and safety for people walking and biking through the intersections. Another key difference between the concepts was the amount of on-street parking that was preserved. We heard early on from the start of the project, essentially, how important on-street parking is to the local businesses and to the community, recognizing that 12th and 13th to serve not just the local neighborhood, but a much broader community, sort of almost regionally. One-lane streets, as I mentioned, design concept 2 reduced traffic to 1 lane of traffic in each direction. And one of the things that we did notice in our traffic analysis, particularly through the vehicular analysis, that 1-lane streets rate very poorly in terms of alignment with project goals to kind of keep cars moving through the community. And then the last difference is really how the location and the facility for providing safe, comfortable places for people to bike, and kind of how those concepts align with safe routes to school recommendations. So those are key findings from the technical evaluation. In terms of traffic, one of the things that I just mentioned was traffic congestion. Another important element is traffic calming. This is something that was an integral piece of goal number 1 for the community. And this graphic shows sort of a simplified summary of the way that each of the design concepts rated in terms of traffic congestion and traffic calming. And when you look at traffic calming, you can see all the concepts rated quite well and aligned well with the community's goals for slower traffic speeds, with the exception of the cross section of 13th in design concept 3. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. A chunk of the reasoning for this kind of lower rating is a wider street section compared to the existing 2-lane street today. And you can also see on the kind of the left side, the traffic congestion, pretty big kind of differences between the way design concepts 1, 2, and 3 function for moving cars. Parking. So this chart shows the number of parking stalls today on the top bar, the number of parking stalls that would be anticipated if the 2011 transportation system plan was implemented, and then the number of parking stalls for each of the design concepts 1, 2, and 3. And there are 2 colors that are shown here. The lighter blue are the number of parking stalls that are on 12th and 13th. And then the blue are the number of parking stalls within 1 block in 12th and 13th. And as a part of phase 2, the project team did a kind of very brief parking analysis and kind of did an audit of the number of existing parking stalls and did some daily counts to identify what the kind of how well used on-street parking was today. In all of the design concepts, one of the goals was trying to preserve and increase the number of parking stalls that would have been provided compared to the TSP. And so here you can see that design concept 2, kind of the 4th row down, provided the most parking, but again, that's the one where we're eliminating a lane of traffic in each direction. One of the other key pieces of sort of our technical evaluation was coordination with emergency responders in the community. And so we met with, prior to the open house, the Hood River County Sheriff, the city fire and police departments. We also coordinated with Westside Fire, and they weren't able to attend. But some of the key things that we heard is that one-way streets on 12th and 13th really are not desirable for emergency access, as they really limit responders' ability to kind of move through the community quickly. And the 2-lane streets provide some redundancy and kind of capacity for emergency vehicles to move through. There was also an interest, and as preferred design is moved forward, as kind of looking at opportunities to build in flexibility where raised bike lanes are directly adjacent to the roadway. And so thinking about if there's a bike lane that's at sidewalk level, but next to the curb with a paved buffer, how can that curb and pavement section be designed to accommodate emergency vehicles that need to get through? Similar to some of the things we talked about early with the agency board and the community. There are kind of concerns with a traffic signal at 13th and May. One of the things that we heard from kind of the fire department and police department locally was, really kind of concerned with the way that a traffic signal and red light period could stop traffic, and particularly for larger vehicles who could end up getting stuck on the hill. One of the other kind of questions that was brought up by the fire department was kind of access to buildings adjacent to the angled parking on 12th. We kind of talked through that, and looking at future scenarios where buildings along 12th Street kind of build up and build out as they redevelop, as kind of those buildings would need to be sprinklered in accordance with local codes. And so I think that alleviated some of the questions there, but it was something that was brought up. So that's a quick summary on sort of the kind of reminder of the technical evaluation. Dustin mentioned the efforts that the project team kind of made to kind of engage the community during the second phase and really sort of drive attendance at the public open house and get people and kind of traffic to the online survey. A lot of great work by city staff, consistently out there on social media. Dustin, I know, went door to door, knocking on businesses and kind of trying to make sure that they were aware that the open house was happening, as well as kind of updating the project website. All of the material that was produced was in Spanish and English to the extent that we could, to make sure that both kind of English and Spanish speaking communities were engaged and kind of had opportunities to participate. Dustin mentioned some of the highlights of the open house. We did have over 250 people that turned out over the 2 days on the Friday and Saturday. Really great showing. I know when we were initially planning the event, I think we were kind of a little bit nervous on the kind of number of people that would come out on a Friday night, and really kudos to Dustin and kind of coordinating with the advisory committee to really get that kind of event to come together and have food and drinks and kind of bike repair kind of opportunities to kind of really get people engaged and come out. We also had Spanish speaking interpreters on site for the full duration of the 2 days. The online survey, we had a lot of traffic come through. Over 1,200 people opened the online survey and kind of answered at least one question, and more than 300 people completed the full survey, online survey. All of the people who opened the survey and answered at least one question, all of those questions were tracked and logged. And so even people that didn't make it all the way through, we do have their findings. And as Dustin mentioned, we had 0 Spanish speaking surveys completed during our phase 1 issues and opportunities survey and asking about project goals. And we had 21 surveys completed for this phase, which we felt really good about, seeing some improvement. As many of you saw kind of from attending in person, the open house, we gave up people opportunities to write sticky notes on sticky notes and post those on the graphics for each of the design concepts, and heard and saw a lot of great dialogue between community members with advisory committee members and with board members and city council members. And so it was really great to get that feedback. A lot of divided opinion, as we probably would have expected, and we've sort of seen the whole time. A couple of images just kind of showing the turnout. And here you can kind of see standing up on the stage at the end of Armory looking out. And this is Friday night, kind of right around kind of the peak run through with people coming through kind of before the dinner hour. Some of the key takeaways from the open house, and this is based on our review of the written comments on the sticky notes and conversations that the project team had, and similar to feedback from the first responders, it did seem like there was a preference for a roundabout over a traffic light at 13th and May for some of the same reasons with the winter weather conditions. We talked to a lot of business and property owners who owned property at the intersection of Belmont 12th and 13th, who were concerned about the impacts to their property with the large intersections improvements that were shown in design concept 2 that had a double roundabout. There were some mixed views on converting 12th and 13th Street back to two-way traffic, and some of the comments were, well, there used to be two-way traffic and it changed and it didn't work then. Some of the winter weather conditions, I mentioned the intersection concerns at 13th and May, and there was also feedback on, or kind of questions on how well bike facilities would be used in the winter. The location of bike lanes was another item that we received a lot of feedback, similar to Megan Ramey's comments tonight. I think there was a lot of support for the two-way cycle track on 12th Street. And then from a character standpoint, as kind of looking to develop a streetscape environment and design, there was a series of images that were presented of people having an opportunity to kind of identify, what resonated with them for the heights, and kind of the use of contemporary materials and thinking about local culture and character was identified as being important. Switching to the online survey, this bar chart shows the kind of mixed feedback. And so a question was asked, which design concept do you align most with? And you can kind of see here, it was split generally between three ways, but there was more support for concept 3, the hybrid. One of the things that we were able to do with the survey feedback is identify based on where people live. So one of the questions asked people to put a pin on the map to show where they lived. We were able to go into the results and start to separate that based on if people lived in the heights versus doesn't live in the heights. And in this overall preference of concept, there's, I think that the results are very similar, and you can kind of see them scale up and down based on the total number of results. But it was interesting to see how some of the key differentiators changed based on where people lived. And so we asked about these 6 key differences between the design concepts: on-street parking, traffic calming, traffic congestion, placemaking, comfortable places for walking, and safe routes to school. And there were a couple, particularly the traffic calming and comfortable places for walking, that had greater differences between the rating and support for people that lived in the heights versus people that didn't live in the heights. On each of these little charts, sort of speedometer charts, 100 on the right, or dark green, is kind of strong alignment with that difference. And so you can see in the middle here, where there was sort of an average score of 59 for traffic calming, it kind of bumped up to 67 for people that live in the heights, and dropped a little bit to 55 for people that don't live in the heights. Similarly, for places for walking, it bumped from 62% up to 71, and down to 58 for people that live and don't live in the heights. Placemaking was sort of the lowest importance in kind of these key differentiator issues, and safe routes to school and traffic congestion were also quite kind of the two sort of, I guess, most important differentiators by issue. The key intersections are a big piece of this puzzle, and kind of thinking about how the kind of redesign of 12th and 13th Street come together to support people walking, biking, and driving through the heights. As Dustin mentioned, the city worked with kind of a separate third party to kind of do its independent review of the roundabout designs at May Street and at 12th and 13th in Belmont. These designs, compared to what was shown at the open house, have been designed and sized to reflect the traffic analysis and make sure that the traffic congestion isn't failing in that future condition. And so here, one of the key differences that compared to what was shown in the preliminary concepts at the open house is that 2 lanes of southbound traffic on 13th Street are required to kind of keep vehicles moving. You can also see the kind of footprint of this roundabout is significantly bigger, I think, than the initial design concept when you take into kind of truck turning movements and that traffic analysis. What's shown here in the dark lines are potential future right-of-way lines to accommodate an intersection improvements. And so what you can see here are there are significant impacts to just existing private parcels, kind of these kind of 3 parcels, and as well as kind of smaller pieces along several. The community input was really split on the level of support for a roundabout. There was slightly more support for people who live in the Heights. Looking at the south end of the corridor and here at Belmont, you can kind of see a sort of different configuration for a double roundabout. Dustin had worked with the third-party kind of roundabout expert to kind of see if there was another way to kind of make this double roundabout come together that didn't have as big of an impact on property. And as you can see here, while this layout kind of reduces some of the impacts that were shown to their preliminary concepts to kind of the armory property, kind of the retaining wall that's here along 13th and the existing kind of restaurant here, there are still significant impacts to kind of the central triangular parcel as well as nearby adjacent parcels. And so, I think there's up to 9 parcels that are impacted here. So very significant cost and footprint impacts for considering roundabouts. So taking all of that information from the kind of technical analysis that the project team completed in February, and then kind of really kind of taking a fine-tooth comb to going through kind of public feedback, the project team, given the kind of divided kind of sentiment and kind of needs, can really balance kind of the local neighborhood goals as well as more kind of regional kind of through traffic needs. Really see design concept 3 being as sort of the base recommendation to move forward with the preferred design with several refinements. And so one of the things that we know is going to be important is how the design of the east-west streets are incorporated. And during the design presentation of the design concepts, we talked about improving Pine, Taylor, and A. Wilson for walking and biking, but we also want to take a look at B and C streets as well as Taylor and A, and kind of how can we increase the amount of on-street parking that is provided so that there's less impact to overall parking. The design of 13th, there's really a need to look for ways to improve the traffic calming. On the graphic I showed earlier, 13th really rated poorly in terms of traffic calming. And so there are some things that can be done from a design standpoint to improve that. Looking for opportunities to incorporate medians, as well as kind of providing a continuous buffer between the east sidewalk and the travel lane. We also want to look at considering how emergency vehicles can kind of move through the corridor. And as I mentioned earlier, look for ways to kind of design those raised bike lanes to provide additional flexibility. Also talking about kind of bike connections, making sure that as we're looking at, two-way cycle track going down 12th, extending south, how can we make that connection outside of our project boundary that is safe and comfortable, and also making connections to the Indian Creek Trail. From an intersection concept, the diagrams that I just showed, conceptual designs, also need to take into consideration how people walking and biking move through those intersections. Those concepts did not include bike lanes, and so those footprints will expand slightly as we kind of work through developing the movement of bikes through roundabouts if those are identified to move forward. And then lastly is kind of thinking about opportunities for placemaking and gathering spaces in the streetscape environment. So we met with the URAC on Thursday. Some of the feedback that we heard, I think, for the advisory committee, there was a lot of information to take, and not everyone was ready to make a kind of a decision, but there was initial support for the project team's recommendation to move forward with a framework that's built on design concept number 3. There were also some concerns and questions related to kind of the feasibility of implementing intersection improvements, particularly with, the cost and property impacts for the roundabouts, and also kind of overall cost considerations, recognizing, the kind of cost to kind of implement all of these improvements to reconstruct the heights. So with that, I think I will take my screen off present mode and open it up to questions and discussion.
Did you have anything, Dustin?
Thank you, Nathan. As far as the board request tonight, to be real clear, we're not looking for an agency board decision tonight. I think we wanted to make sure that we had presented the materials and some of the findings in the packet, and then seek opportunities for questions from you all, and to really help equip you to walk through the material when it comes time to make a decision after you've had an opportunity to review, and to make sure that we're answering or addressing your questions. If there's any blind spots in the material, things that we didn't analyze, this is an opportunity for the board to really become introduced to this bundle prior to any direction or decision that you are authorized to make at phase 2 and before we go into final design. And I think that's an important aspect to note, is that this is not the final design. Really, at the end of phase 2, we're looking at really some of the foundational pieces that we will launch into final design. The details of curb gutter, bump outs, some of those features that really take shape. This is really an opportunity to set some of the foundational directions in which we will build on. So this is definitely an opportunity for you all to ask any preliminary questions before you go into deliberation, to share any information with us, concerns with the data, with the information, and what materials you feel like you need as the board to take some direction on this.
Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate it. I guess I'm just going to go down the line and see if people have comments or questions. We aren't making a decision this evening, but just more things to look at or concerns or anything like that. And then I'm just going to go down the line here of the people that are sitting here, and then I'm going to go to people that are online as soon as I get done with those. Megan?
Thanks, Kate. These are going to be all over the place, but clearly you guys have talked to ODOT and gotten feedback, and I'm wondering, have we gotten so far down the feedback that everything that's being discussed is possible, or is there still some later review where we would find out something proposed is actually off the table?
Yeah, I would say absolutely not. In terms of the ODOT compliance, ODOT has not consented to the agreement, nor have we looked to refine it or bring it back to satisfy ODOT requirements. I think we are taking the opportunity to really get this as the truest representation of the community's vision. We've definitely been in discussion with ODOT the whole time. Their technical staff is aware of it. Certainly things that the community has shown is what they, and some of the concepts have would require ODOT exceptions or design exceptions that they have not yet put forward their statement, whether they would support that or not. But the discussion that will have to happen. And if we need to land an ODOT direction, I think early on we had discussed with the agency, does this need to be an ODOT facility? Is it important? Would a jurisdictional transfer be entertained? Those are things that we've held back until the point where we kind of had some direction and wayfinding on. But through the entire process, ODOT technical staff has been involved. We've met with them on a number of occasions. They have the materials that you have before you tonight as well, just to try to keep them up to speed as a partner.
Okay. So that would occur during the refinement of the preferred alternative?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess basically I'm like, I don't want to come to the end of this and have the report and then go, oh, we can't do it.
No, it will be critical that ODOT is involved really early on from kind of moving forward from this direction.
Okay, great.
Or for you to know if this is your preferred design and you want to take this further, it may be just maybe the time we start talking about jurisdictional transfer or the likelihood of a design exception be granted. So.
Awesome. Then complete change of subject. May and 12th intersection. I mean, I know was talked about in the 3 alternatives for the open house and everything, and wondering where that's at, since we didn't really have anything tonight of what's proposed.
Yeah, so I think, that would sort of follow the design concept 3 that was there, and all of the each of the design concepts. A traffic signal was suggested as part of the design concepts, and so we would build off of that as the base, if that helps.
Yes, I think I've forgotten what all the specifics of the concepts are.
Yep. Nope.
Okay, thank you. And I guess this is more in the asking for some more information before decision making, but we've got the data of, oh, it's 30 seconds delay or 90 seconds delay or increases traffic congestion by some amount. And I don't know if there's a metric or a way to really frame that and giving a comparison that my brain can actually comprehend of like, oh, is that, driving on Oak Street in the height of August at 5 o'clock, or is it, and I know that means nothing to you, Nathan, sorry.
No, that's helpful. And I saw John Bosket just kind of turned his video screen on, and I think he's ready to try to best answer your question as he can as from the traffic engineering perspective.
Yeah, hi. I can throw more numbers at you, which might help or not. We'll see. So maybe to put this in context a little bit, to travel through the corridor in either direction, let's say if you do it at 25 miles an hour, which is the posted speed. Of course, this is assuming you didn't stop for pedestrians, any traffic signals, things like that. It's just kind of your baseline driving through at 25 miles an hour. It would take about 55 seconds, given the length of that corridor. So when you say there's 30 additional seconds of delay, that's an increase of about 55%, which equates to about an average speed of 16 miles an hour. So picture driving through the corridor at 16 miles per hour instead of 25. When you go up to 90 seconds of additional delay, that's more like 9 miles per hour. So hopefully that kind of helps put that in context.
That does, thank you.
Okay, all right, Mark?
Yeah, thanks for the summary. This is the super interesting stuff for sure. With respect to ODOT, I think the exceptions are fine. I think that an IOU is fine. What we don't want to do is invest a bunch in the next stage of design if there's, we're going to hit a stop. And I think that's Megan's point as well. So it's, is there a way forward to invest in the design and process to come up with a final alternative, a final design kind of thing. I really expected a little bit of like, okay, here's that it isn't picking 1, 2, or 3, but it's okay. It's, we're gonna make a camel a little bit, and there was a lot of interest in this part of 2 and in this part of 3, and let's mush them together. And is that not? Are we really just picking between the 3? That surprises me.
I think it really comes down to there's sort of limited space you can kind of shift around, and so there isn't probably as much picking and choosing as a travel lane's 11 feet, 10 feet. And so it's kind of, you can kind of pick or choose some. And I think to some extent, the hybrid already does a little bit of that by kind of pushing kind of design concept 1 and 2 together. But we've tried to identify kind of refinements that would build on sort of a base alternative. And that's kind of where we are. Alex, do you?
I think one piece I would add is that from the engagement component, part of it was throughput. That was one of the considerations. But I think the big kind of concern, both in the survey and in the impersonal events, were about parking. And so when we think about kind of the refinement or starting to think, is this alternative 1, 2, or 3? The alternative 3. Sorry, my phone just fell. The alternative 3 would we'd actually be able to look at some of the east-west streets potentially for looking at being able to retain or increase some of the parking within the district. So it's not a smashing alternative 2 or 3 together. It's really trying to refine that to be able to address community concerns or needs as much as possible within that envelope that Nathan suggested. I think the other question that you had about how far do we push within this alternative and get to a point where there's no going back, it's jurisdictional transfer or it's an exception or it's ODOT accepted. That is definitely something to consider as we move forward, because there will be discussion points, and we actually had this discussion point during our very first meeting, is what is ultimately the implementation measure or kind of role for the city and ODOT to take this forward. And so that is something to consider for how you would want to eventually manage this facility. Is it an ODOT facility? Is it a city facility? Because they do have different design requirements, essentially, that we would need to think about. And so I think that is a piece of the discussion here. But ultimately, alternative 3 meets to the greatest degree the community feedback on what they wanted to see within the alternative.
I like alternative 3 as well. There's neat things about it. And I guess, hitting on the parking in the side streets is, having that fleshed out a little bit more. All 3 of the concepts were just below current and just above TSP, right? And so finding out where we really are by fleshing out the, how we deal with the side streets and stuff, and how the side streets relate to biking, cross flow, biking and walking and stuff. Those are interesting things that I guess will come out no matter which way we go, just in the next phase, right?
Yeah, and I think that given some of the limitations on kind of balancing kind of the mix and match on 12th and 13th, and there is a desire to kind of how can we make 13th more like concept 2, where there's more separation from vehicles, but really looking at those east-west streets to make up the items that are sort of lacking from a community perspective on east-west streets.
Right. I did see a reference to 13th with little safety islands at some intersections. Is that a realist? Is there enough room to do that? How does? Because there was a with and without, and one was a green arrow and one was a red arrow.
Yeah. So that the traffic calming was shown to kind of rate poorly for 13th for design concept 3, and that's where we really want to. If this design concept 3 moves forward as a base, how can we narrow that roadway cross section for people walking across the street? How can we slow cars down as they're driving along 13th? And how can we provide more separation between moving cars and people walking?
Yeah,
and
perfect.
So by having that continuous turn lane, where can we strategically take out the center turn lane, limit turns, and provide a median?
Yep.
And so, I think it would be desirable to find locations where we can do that.
And that'll be in the next step, no matter what, almost, right?
Yeah, we'd be looking to refine that moving forward. If kind of the base of design concept 3 is.
Okay, that's all I got.
Thanks,
I
Mark.
reserve the right.
Just in case. Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Dustin, and for the presenters. I guess I just start by saying, just from speaking only for myself, this feels like this is going to be perhaps one of the most consequential decisions that at least I, as an individual counselor, will have been asked to make in my 4 years on this board. Maybe it's not the number 1, but it's perhaps the top 3. And in light of that, I very much appreciate all the detail, because this is a very much a challenging decision, because we have kind of the classic Hood River problem where we have wonderful visions and needs for this property, but dealing with constraint real estate and a canvas that's been handed to us by generations behind us. But I am just signaling that I'm really struggling with this decision, because there's a lot about the Heights that really works. It's this center of commerce for an entire region, and I'm personally concerned about swapping one problem for another set of problems, but hear loud and clear the need for some of these elements, which seem really brilliant, reading through sort of selectively, like perhaps Mark was saying in a way. But I guess just in terms of questions for me right now, design 3 seemed to have a light at 13th, and I did see that was of a potential 13th in May, excuse me, potential concern of the public safety folks and some of the comments that were received in the wintertime with, a truck parked waiting for a red light on the hill of 13th north of May Street could present problems. So, and then I saw the roundabout, which sounds like a better solution, but pretty big footprint for that. And I guess my questions relate around that. So first of all, I guess, is it certain, just if we're saying yes to Plan 3, does that mean we're saying a light rather than a roundabout at May and 13th? I don't think so, because we saw the diagram, say head shaking, no good. And so then if we're going to consider a roundabout there, I wondered who's, and there looked like we have to condemn a little bit of property. So who is the condemning authority? I assume it's the city and it's not ODOT, and maybe a slightly different question, who's paying for, even if ODOT condemns, are we paying for it? I assume the answer is yes. And then the pretty wide cut for that right of way into Jackson Park on that slide you showed. I just wonder, what does it mean to have a right of way into a park? Are we actually at risk of losing part of Jackson Park if we go with option 3? Or is a right of way just a little strip of land that nobody really is ever going to touch? So I just wondered, those are my only questions right now, is just around the light May and 13th, and what does it really mean to have a right of way going pretty significantly to Jackson Park?
Yeah, so kind of to answer the kind of first question, the original design concept 3 had a signal. When we came to the board last year to kind of early in the year to kind of refine, there was direction, but let's change the traffic signal to a roundabout in design concept 3. And so that change had been made from board feedback. Any of the design concepts can work operationally with a signal or a roundabout. So they're not they're not dependent on the circulation shown in the design concepts. And so one of the reasons that there's not a recommendation for specific intersection improvements as a part of the project team's recommendation is recognizing the kind of property and cost differences between a traffic signal and a roundabout, and really kind of recognizing that, that decision should be made up by the board. In terms of the right of way along the park, that's really more than would be needed just to kind of provide the kind of transportation facilities in the right of way. I know Dustin can probably speak to it a little bit more in terms of how he communicated with the kind of roundabout consultant. But I think that is either showing kind of more than is needed from a grading standpoint, or allowing for some kind of temporary staging area during construction.
Yep, that is correct. I think it's not a final completion of the product. There's a significant amount of grade that there's a fall off to the west from 13th into Jackson. Most likely at least temporary construction measures, buildability and maintenance. That's what's accounted for in that as well. So I don't think we're expecting that to become part of road driving surface, but the right of way, even at this preliminary stage, was just considered for if you were going to acquire or need right away, we need to build outside of that to build those improvements in. So most likely it's pretty conservative when it comes to buildability, but it's something for feasibility we want you all to be aware of now. The consultant on that really wasn't asked to differentiate between what was a park and what was private property. Once they went outside the right of way, I asked them to identify potential impacts. So the fact that we have authority over that, I didn't want them to differentiate, because we wanted to just kind of have you all just see it for what it is. In terms of take authority, we'll confirm with legal, but my expectation is the city would, or the agency would be the body, and ODOT would not, especially if you talk about a right-of-way intersection improvement. ODOT is not going to lead that effort. That would be the agency leading that effort. And I think in terms of characterization, Nathan touched on this. I would consider both intersection improvements kind of a la carte menu. Both will work. We have an opportunity to pick them, to fit them into the intersection design. Neither of them are easy. Neither of them are perfect. We have that opportunity to decide that. And when we move into preferred design, same thing with the side streets. Side streets aren't the foundation what we're working from. They are important a la carte menus that will have to go with any design. The final design will work. We'll work into the alphabet streets and the Taylor Street to address those. They have significant meaning when it comes to access. A lot of the future access will be taken from the side streets. Most of the access now is actually from the side streets. So using that access requirement, combining with parking, access to the alley, the use of the alley are all going to really hinge on the alphabet streets in Taylor.
One other thing one other item I think that's important to mention that Dustin we've talked about is, the existing intersections don't function today from a safety standpoint for people walking. There's not bike facilities, and in the future they're not going to operate at a level of vehicular service that kind of meets needs. And so, whether it's a signal or roundabout, something different, there is a need to improve the intersection sort of regardless of what happens with the other streetscape improvements. Is that fair to say, Dustin?
Yeah, this is a really important point that I don't think we'd be doing a disservice if we minced words. Is you have current intersections that are failing in terms of level of service today. You have intersections that will continue to fail as background traffic moves along, and you have intersections today that a vast majority of them do not meet ADA in terms of pedestrian and safety. So the reason why I need to put that out there is why we have a lot of questions of why do you need to change something? Why does the status quo not work? It works fine today. Well, I can't stand up here and tell you it works fine when we have failing intersections and non-compliant pedestrian environments. That's why something needs to be proposed. And I think we kind of acknowledge that as an organization and our goals. But for those who follow along and those who participated, there was a lot of talk of, it works fine today. That was the comment. And from our technical analysis, we have some pretty serious data that says otherwise.
So just to clarify on that, even if we didn't change anything with the streetscape or, the two-way traffic, we would have to be doing something at May and 13th and Belmont and 13th.
Yeah, all forecast that predate for the past 11 years now, basically say not only are Belmont and 13th now is a failed intersection. I mean, it has failed its level of service, and it's only going to get worse as the background traffic continues. May and 13th is en route to that. It will fail, and it will, under normal assumptions, 10 years ago assumptions, will need to have some sort of intersection improvement, regardless of this project.
Do you have another question, Eric? Those on the online. Let's see, Tim.
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks to the project team, and thanks to Dustin and everybody that's done this. Certainly a lot of work has gone into it. And I do agree that alternative 3 seems to be a concept worth pursuing. I agree with the thought that there needs to be coordination with ODOT, that's very important. And also agree with Mark's point that additional details are needed in order to fully understand the real outcome of alternative 3 as presented. I think one of the things that that struck me during this whole conversation, especially kind of the last bit, is that I think what we're talking about here a lot is like a public safety issue. And, when I hear things like the traffic calming discussed, I think that what the reason why people are concerned with traffic calming is to provide a more safe situation for the people that are driving, walking, and biking in the Heights. And I think it's kind of an underlying current in all this, but it doesn't seem, the word safety doesn't seem to be very explicitly mentioned. And maybe if we can make more reference to that, especially, how these various concepts provide a more safe environment for people in the Heights, maybe that would be helpful to me. And I think it's an important thing to emphasize. So as going forward, if we can think about, expressing that more directly, I think that would be helpful. But other than that, I mean, there's obviously so many facets to this that it really is kind of hard to wrap your head around all of it. So maybe by kind of focusing in on alternative 3 and, focusing the discussion more on that, maybe it'll be easier to to present that information so it's clearer. So I'm sure those are really my thoughts. But I do, appreciate all the work that's gone into this. And I also would say that I also appreciate all of the public input that we've gotten into this process too. And the public has been very involved. So good job and good work all around. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tim.
Just one quick kind of note about the kind of Councillor Tim's question about the safety. And the intent in developing design concepts is that they were all going to provide a base level of safety. And so there was sort of a conscious decision to not rate or talk about safety because the intent is that they're all creating a safe environment. And so that was just sort of one kind of statement I wanted to acknowledge from the project team's perspective.
Yeah, and it's not really meant as a criticism, but I think it's really kind of more of a way to highlight the benefits of the project going forward, as opposed to trying to rank this one as being more safe or not safe. Obviously, the final solution is going to have to provide a certain level of safety, like you mentioned. But I think emphasizing that it really is kind of a safety issue. I think as Dustin aptly mentioned there towards the end with respect to the intersections, that it's not, this is not an aesthetic thing. It may be to some extent, but in reality, what we're talking about here is providing a level of service that is safe and that preserves aspects of the heights and ensures the well-being of the business owners there as well. But safety is a significant component of that.
Thanks, Tim.
Sure.
Gladys?
Thank you, Mayor. I echo a lot of the comments that have already been made by my peers. We need to have additional details for the outcomes, including having coordination with ODOT. I too agree in moving forward with proposal number 3, but throughout all this, all I just kept thinking was cost. How much is this going to cost us if we own it versus ODOT? And so I think it would be really nice to just at least have a guesstimate on all 3 and how much each one of them would cost, with the assumption that right now the city would continue to collaborate with ODOT. Back to the question that Councillor Haney asked around Jackson Park. If we were to go with option 3, ODOT says yes, we're moving forward. Does that mean that the park would be closed during that time just because of how close construction teams are? Like, would it be safe for families to be anywhere in that vicinity during that time? That was my one question.
Yeah, certainly we don't have an answer for that, but I would be hard pressed to think that we would be looking for any sort of park closure. But we're way far away from that implementation and staging answer for you at this point.
Yeah. And similar to Councillor Cunahan's last comment, I think it's so important, Dustin, you mentioned the why, and that the why is around safety. When I worked closer to that specific intersection, I witnessed multiple of my peers actually being hit by vehicles as they were crossing. So it was really scary to see that in real time. We don't have the safest intersections down in that area. So I appreciate the reminder that they are failed intersections and that these improvements are intended to create better safety for our community members. And I wanted to start off, and now I realized I left it for the end, how very grateful I am to our amazing city staff, Dustin, the team, Nubia, Abigail, everyone. Appreciate the time and effort and energy that was put into marketing this event to ensure that we did have proper turnout. It's exciting to see that there were community members there. I was able to be present for one of those days, and it was exciting to get to see people give their input. And so I really value that all of these proposals in front of us have been vetted by our community members, and that our community members were able to select their favorite. I really hope that we continue this for all the other projects that we have. As we've seen, it can work. And with that said, thank you, Nathan, Alex, and to the DKS team for your time and energy on all of this work, and for, again, connecting directly with our community members and really explaining the background history and the why in person. I think it's so important when folks understand the why, that they are more susceptible to be open to new ideas and suggestions for safety.
Thanks, Gladys. Christy?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry that my camera's not on. We're having internet problems over here, so just trying to conserve bandwidth. I had a couple of questions about number one. I mean, I understand that you've given a lot of opportunity for people to reach out with their feedback, but has there been direct reach out to the businesses? Because I've talked to a number of business owners, and they don't really seem to be in as much of the know as it seems to the level of the plan that we're at. So that would be my first question. And then my second question is, I've heard a lot of the businesses say that, calming of traffic is incredibly important. And I think we can all agree about that. But why hasn't the city or anyone discussed turning the Heights into a business district so we could lower the speed limit to 20 miles per hour? I think that would help immediately calm things down a little bit.
Thank you, Mayor. In terms of direct outreach, myself, along with the city manager, definitely put in some first-person FaceTime, the old-fashioned way, going door to door, dropping off cards. I think it was really important to be able to come to this point and say we walked 12th and 13th, especially those facing businesses with something. Really the intent to engage them personally, and also to invite them not only to be a part of the community conversation. So we handed out lots of hundreds and hundreds of postcards that they not only be aware of it themselves, but also share amongst their community group. So definitely a lot of steps. We gained some steps with that first person interaction. In terms of traffic calming, it's still an ODOT facility. So the state, lowering the speed limit is a state call at this point. We don't have control over that. Certainly an aspect of this entire effort, speed will be something that we'll look at. I'm not a traffic expert, but in terms of placemaking, in terms of community design, posting the speed limit is not necessarily the most effective way to control speed. If we have a traffic calming measure, we're going to probably rely on traffic signs and speed limit posting to be the last method to message that, and really create an environment that encourages people to drive slow rather than telling them what the desired number is. So hopefully, we will address that by a greater design that emphasizes the speed, which calms traffic. But it is something right now that the state would have control over. And if you look at trying to control a state-owned and operated facility and drop it below 25 miles an hour, we would have an equally ambitious project as we do with this one, for a sign. So.
Thank you for that. And then my last question is, in the current TSP plan, isn't there a clause that if significant parking is going to be removed, that there is a parking garage planned? And where, all of these plans remove a significant amount of parking. So is there a plan for a parking garage or facility?
I don't think there's a TSP parking garage plan, but or that would be an urban renewal project. I don't believe there's an urban renewal project for a parking garage. The good thing is all the concepts rate better in terms of the limited number of or the number of parking spaces that have to be removed are all less than what the TSP would demand today. So it was something we wanted to be really mindful of. And that's why we did the first ever parking analysis in the Heights was through this project, looking at that, and certainly being mindful of the parking amounts and their impact. That was something that we wanted to be really concerned about when it came to design alternatives that limited the amount of parking that had to be taken out, especially as compared to the TSP.
All right. Is that all your questions, Christy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Heather?
Hi. I'm glad I'm one of the last ones because a lot of my questions have been answered. I agree with Councilor Haney that this is a difficult decision because really have to take into consideration that I want to see, it's exciting to see the visual beautification, visually appealing and all the major improvements and the safety aspect, but also, not harm businesses and help maybe even improve the business traffic. And it's going to be a hard decision, I guess. I want to make sure that the businesses are on board with whatever we decide. No questions.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple questions or things I'd like to hear about in the next phase, I guess. The ODOT, yes or no, would be great to find out early on whether they're going to be semi-nodding their heads or not. And trying to get numbers for those roundabouts versus lights is going to be critical because we will have X amount of money, and we will try and get funding from ODOT for different things if ODOT still has control of at least one of the streets. But you know how long it takes to get a signal put at Rand Road and Second. So, how long is this going to take is a question. So weighing all those things and what would be done first and second and that kind of thing, I was kind of surprised by the survey that said that placemaking or beautification was actually the last thing that people were concerned about. It was more about safety all around, whether you lived out in the country or in town. But I thought the beautification would come up a little bit higher than it did in the surveys for both in and out of town. So that was a surprise. I guess of the three, the public spoke. Number 3 is the one that both people that live in town and out of town, even if it's not their dream plan, that was the one that they chose above the other two. So I'm on board with number 3. And I'd like to see, what can be made of that with the extra parking on the east-west side streets. And I guess my question about, I like roundabouts, but I know they're expensive and they take up a lot of land. That being said, the one on 13th and May seems like it's going to take up a lot less land than the one on Belmont. But my question about getting stuck on 13th below the hospital, do we have any statistics from city police, city fire, state police, or anything for the last 30 years? I wouldn't go past 30 years because we know things are warming up. So how many times have semis gotten stuck on that road, and where have they gotten stuck? Because I've remembered, 3 in my lifetime. So to make a whole plan around the possibility of maybe a vehicle getting stuck at 13th and May, when normally that's not where they get stuck. They get stuck at about Sherman and 13th because that's the steepest part. So I'd like to have some statistics on how many vehicles actually get stuck versus just cars get stuck. If you can get that data.
Yeah, we can check in and see what type of look back we can do.
Okay. All right. Did you have another comment, Megan?
I guess to what you're saying of most of them aren't getting stuck at the actual intersection. It's down the hill a ways. I mean, as someone who stated the concern about the 13th and May intersection, like the concern is that they would be backed up at the light and end up having to stop on the steepest section. And therefore, you know, we always get a couple of winter, but if there's a lot more people having to stop there, there's a lot more people potentially getting stuck there.
And then my next question is, and this is probably for John Bosket at DKS. If we get a bad storm, I mean, I've seen this in other places, can we turn that intersection light to a flashing yellow and a red stop going east and west for those 2 days out of the winter that we need it to be that way, so people don't have to stop coming up? Is that a possibility?
I think that's something to consider. I think the biggest concern might be if you do it too often, then drivers will come up and their expectations won't be met. But I guess if it were in like I said, very limited circumstances, something like that might be possible. I mean, and another thought too, to help with the trucks, if you had to go to the traffic signal, is it may be possible to use some radar detection on 13th. So if it detects a large vehicle coming up the hill, it can send a message to the signal to extend the green time to reduce the amount of stopping, but just something to consider.
Yeah, with the technology we have now, you know, that might not be as much of an issue as it might have been in the past, I guess. So that's my comments. Do you need anything else from us? You've gotten a few people that have said that they thought number 3 was something that they'd like to go forward with, but we aren't making a decision this evening.
Correct. We were just looking to hear what your concerns were, so we can try to address those and bring back some information. Again, if there were blind spots, if there were pieces that you found a little cloudy, that we could make those a little more robust, and again, give you all the opportunity to see the executive summary presentation of 400 pages of worth of work in a couple months of your staff. So really, this was an opportunity for you to have some questions.
All right, great. Megan's got one more question.
That did jog my memory, sorry. And I know you guys are looking at 13th Street for traffic calming and everything. And I guess within that, my question, you know, currently I think there's 2 crossings because ODOT got rid of all the other ones. And so is there, within all of this, would we be able to add more? Or how do you make sure if there's only parking on one side of the street that people can access businesses on the other easily and, you know, the whole thing of we want to be able to have people safely cross through the heights east-west. Are there ways to create more places for that or make that not just safer with the bump outs at the actual crossing, but enhance the number of options, I guess?
Yeah, I think definitely as we get to the PED plan and those locations, like we will have the details, like probably what we would consider a recommendation for the right number. You know, when is too many enough that it obstructs flow? When is too few cause people to cross where we don't want them to? We'll have a real thoughtful and recommendation response for the number of crossings and how they work within the context of this project. I think missing that mark would be a fatal flaw by the time we got back and landed this.
Anyone else with a last comment? Mark? No? Nothing? Okay. Anyone else online that has any more questions or anything? I don't hear any. Okay, great. Thank you, Dustin, Nathan, Alex, John, for your presentation and all your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Any other items from agency members? Anyone here? Anyone online with any other news or questions? No? Okay, we're going to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 7:27. All right, we are going to reopen the Hood River City Council meeting. And we have a presentation from David Skakel on the Tri-County Household Hazardous Waste.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Promise that Dustin's going to cue up my slideshow here. I'm David Skakel, 1550 State Road in Mosier, Oregon. And I'm the program coordinator for Tri-County Hazardous Waste and Recycling Program, of which the city of Hood River is a member. Here we go. So the program started in 2006 in terms of providing service. And some of you know this, but I'm just providing essentially a periodic update. Before the Tri-County Hazardous Waste Recycling Program began, the core mission is hazardous waste collection, and we do other things I'll describe. But previous to that time, Oregon DEQ would host a hazardous waste event, typically once a year in the Gorge, Hood River this year, the Dalles the next. And they strategized at that time to pull together the funds they had for those events and instead pivot to providing research and planning and capital funding grants for programs to communities that start their own hazardous waste programs. Granted that they could find a way to actually fund them operationally over time. I'm pleased to say our program was the first to apply and successfully as a multi-jurisdictional approach, which I think is key to our success to date by combining 3 counties, Hood River, Wasco, and Trimmer counties, and 6 cities within, including the city of Hood River, as intergovernmental members of that program, of which structurally there's a steering committee with each of those 9 IGA members having an equal vote. And I've been with the program since 2008, which is the same year that Kevin Liberty, your city planner, has been an esteemed representative for the city since that time. So see if we can get this to move forward. To advance, maybe not. Looking for an advance on the side. Okay.
That one.
Great, thanks.
Oh, we got it.
That works. All right. So yeah, there we are, 3 counties and 6 cities. And we cover a lot of square miles. We have 2 hazardous waste facilities co-located at the transfer stations in Hood River and the Dalles. We do 19 to 20 hazardous waste events a year, in addition to by appointment as well for people who have hardships. And this is the humble beginnings here in Hood River, where a hazardous waste smaller set of lockers were developed back in the day. And when I came on board in 2008, this is what it looked like. A small hazardous waste facility in a island of gravel, and it just reeked of hazard. And so we pretty quickly, and it just sort of bled out onto the street there, busy place at the transfer station. And we rapidly worked together with Oregon DEQ, our program members, and the garbage company, and fully paved that area. And so, not to get too granular here, but that just showing a history of the improvements and investments in hazardous waste collection in Hood River, including for farmers. That's a key piece of the agricultural community, as well as the Dalles and Trimmer County. And so we do standalone events to collect the agricultural pesticides in the area. And just a little bit of statistic, but we collect now pretty steadily 200 to 250,000 pounds of hazardous waste a year in our 3-county area. About 75% of that is recycled in one way or another. It's mostly the dry pesticides that need to be incinerated. So it's a fascinating story of where things go. I won't, in the interest of time, engage you in that right now, but there's more collecting at Hood River. And we are committed to continual improvement, which includes trying to collect more at a lower cost, find cost savings over time, which has allowed us to expand and leverage, for instance, statewide policies for programs that manufacturers pay for. We try to add that to the mix of things that we can collect, including now latex paint and medicines and cell phones and TVs and computers at all of our 20 events. And it's had a really synergistic effect on the number of participants and the amount of waste that we collect. And most recently, here's a photo in Cascade Locks, June 11th, I think, our annual event there. We do quarterly events in Hood River, plus a 5th event just for farmers. But we do these single, once a year remote events, we call them, in some of our smaller towns. But we started eyeing refrigerant as something of importance, both because it's what we find abandoned out in the community, and we speculated that, and also these AC units, refrigerators and freezers have a gas of concern for climate, and we speculated that the disposal cost for them is an impediment for some people to do the right thing. And so we've been working in concert with a garbage company to help them bring their collection disposal costs down from $35 to $10. We make that happen. And just since October, that's been in place. We've seen a doubling of the collection of those. That's an example of some of the stuff we do. And we were in the background also monitoring trends in solid waste and hazardous waste and recycling, which has been tumultuous and changing a lot lately, for worse and for better. I think the horizon looks pretty good for the recycling side of things, based on some major significant legislation passed last year to modernize Oregon's recycling system. It's such a big comprehensive bill that it's going to take fully until 2025 to implement. But there's a lot going on right now in terms of, and I think rural communities like Hood River are going to asymmetrically win out on that legislation, because it, for one, covers the cost of the transportation of recyclables to market. But we monitor the trends and the policies. We guide communities like yourselves, and also provide outreach to citizens on those issues. This is a photo of, it's now defunct, but the Paul Lipinski there, A&P Recycling in the Dalles, been there for 40 years. Sort of early, he went into business since when the bottle bill started. But just literally awash in cardboard at a time when policies in China sent ripples across North America and elsewhere, which promulgated the very legislation that I just spoke of, which I think is going to help us in the long run. So I'm here. I could wrap this up in just a couple of minutes, but I'm touting a new tool in our bag. We have really taken the program, for various reasons, down from a staff of 3 to 1 for a number of years. And then it's been a little over a year now where we've been able to bring on a communications and outreach assistant, Morgane, who's doing great things, but is not able to be here tonight. I'm glad to say she's looking forward to having her baby soon. And she put together this app, which the garbage company has as well, but it's sort of the standard online tool for queries about hazardous waste and recycling questions. And so this right here, if you look at it, it mirrors our website and all of the resources on it at the top, and then can show you how to register for our hazardous waste events. And hey, here's this new opportunity for refrigerators that I just mentioned. And then there's this whole wizard for questions about what can I recycle. It's location based, so depending on the county you're in. And go a little deeper, you can just do a name search for something, and it also populates some of the popular items that people are also asking about. And then here, if you want to know about what to do with my paint, it'll give you locations for drop off and also our hazardous waste events. Same thing for medicine there as well. And then here's an example on the recycling side, clamshells. What do I do with them? Turns out for curbside recycling, that's currently garbage, but if that changes, we can update. The other cool thing about the software or platform is that it is also crowdsourced information. So if people have additional questions or some trends come up from the public, we become aware of that, and then we can add that to the mix. And this is back to, you may be aware, we're turning to a registration process for our hazardous waste events. We unfortunately had to cancel one recently due to COVID-related health issues. But here's an example of, in the end, it's going to make it easier for folks in the community to sign up for an event and get their messaging and phone or email and such. And so that's my fast-paced update. And if you have any questions, let me know. But we just like to come by once a year if we can, and especially if there are any newbies on the council, to make sure you're aware of the program and what you're a part of, and any feedback. And that's my presentation.
Questions? I was just going to point out that, David, Tri-County was critical to us getting our bin system put in place. And in the last 5 years, we've done 5,000 tons of stuff diverted from landfill to compost, and we have recycling in that bin too. So, we're appreciative of what you're doing, and I don't have to flush that stuff down the toilet anymore. I'm just kidding. We always bring stuff to David's.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor.
Can I ask a question? So this is wonderful. Thank you for this presentation. I'm glad to hear this. What would be, if we have more of these events, so that more people could have more frequent access to this, that maybe would otherwise be tempted to say, oh, it's 3 months from now, let's go ahead and put it in the crash. What would be the path to allowing your organization to have more of this?
We're asking that same question. That's a good one. So we're not so sure that more is the problem. We have some data when we used to do monthly events, Hood River and the Dalles, and we did find that when we switched to quarterly, interestingly, we collected more waste, and it was cheaper, less staffing on the hazardous waste side. So we found out that lots of people were just regulars bringing small amounts, and so we're open to that, but we're not convinced that regular access is the issue. And one of the things we're honing in on right now, we survey everybody who comes in, see what they're bringing in, and we're really trying to, and through the registration process, that puts us in front of people before they show up. So we can once we find that out, we can let them know about a number of things that they have all regular options for, that they don't even need to come to the event. They can return their paint to retail or bring their batteries to the garbage company, et cetera. So in a way, it's going to be a little tough for us to figure out if our participation dropped. Is that a bad thing, or did we actually help people find a better avenue? But we're asking the same questions. We're just not resolved on that one just yet.
Chairman Gladys, do you have anything?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Gladys.
I'm having a hard time hearing you also. I don't know if maybe the mics aren't working. Thank you so much for being here today and for presenting on this important service in the community. I was curious about your information, if it's in Spanish at all. I did have a chance to log on to your website through my computer and my phone, and I was unable to find information in Spanish, which I think is really important, so that everyone understands how to properly take care of their greasy pizza boxes.
Yeah, another fine question. Thank you. That is a goal of ours on the website. And on our print mailings, we're bilingual. So all our newsletters are in English and Spanish. So I agree about the importance.
My parents actually have a little pamphlet that hangs over their refrigerator, but it was in English. And I wondered if that same education pamphlet is available in Spanish, or is it just in English?
Well, if it isn't, it can be, and I do translation regularly for documents. And if you'd like, just let the council know, or Kevin Liberty, city planner, know. We'll get that to you. But moving forward, our print mailings are all bilingual. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have staff there that's Spanish speaking?
Staff, solo un poquito.
What was that?
we have two staff, and like I say, I'm the one standing at the moment, but
yeah,
it is limiting.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Those were all my questions. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, I thought sorry about that, Gladys. I had my microphone off. I thought that the one that we got from you actually was English on one side and Spanish on the other side.
Correct.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it may be another document or a trifold or something. Yeah.
Anything, Tim?
Just to acknowledge David and Tri-Cities' hard work and progress at removing hazardous waste from our community. It's really appreciated by me.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor. And the other side of it is the recycling side, which I really empathize with community members on how complicated it is, especially in the realm of plastics. And, I'm apparently a professional in this realm and I'm confused. So we're trying our best to figure it out and translate that in English and Spanish to the community.
I guess one more thing, David. Just wanted to let you know or acknowledge that you helped with our robotics team many years ago. Do you remember that, where you helped them develop an app?
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to let you know that all those kids just graduated from high school, just to make you feel old.
Yeah, you succeeded. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
you,
David.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate all the information. All right.
I'll wrap it up.
Mayor, could I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a last minute request for public comment. I'm going to bring you the sign up sheet for me to call on him first before we go to our next presentation.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I thought everyone we had was just for the other things. Okay. Thanks. We'll go ahead with this then. So this is comments from the audience, and Eric Odercloud. I'm not sure if I'm saying if that's how this is pronounced. 824 State Street, and you want to talk on code enforcement?
Yes.
Okay, but 3 minutes.
We've had our house at 824 State Street for 25 years now, and living in the community, it's beautiful living here. We walk all the time, and one of the challenges that we find is the lack of code enforcement on the right-of-way with sidewalks. And I tried to take get some printouts for you guys, but if you don't mind, I can just walk up and show you a couple of pictures just right on Oak Street of half of the sidewalk is covered in dirt or bushes.
Know what you actually need to do, Eric? You need to give that to our city manager, and she can bring that up for us. That's how we usually do any print.
I can also Sir, if you want to also email them, I can email them to the counselors because we have a couple of counselors who are remote today, so they won't be able to see them.
Okay, perfect. I can email them to you after
Great,
this.
but I'll walk it around to those who are here.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, between 6th and 9th on Oak and from Oak all the way to 13th, both sides of Oak, both sides of State Street. Cascade has some problems. I've walked down through there. Not just coming up to say, hey, there's a problem, you guys should deal with it. I think a great solution would be, I've talked to code enforcement guy before, and he's like, I'll walk through the neighborhood and send those people specifically notices. I think it would behoove the community to actually send out a letter to every address and say, hey, on this date, code enforcement is going to come by and you're going to get a fine if you don't meet the code. That gives people time to plan, to deal with it. It puts people on notice that, hey, we need to do this. I think it'll also provide an opportunity for community members such as myself. I'd be happy to like organize, hey, we have this date. I'm going to, work with a couple neighborhood people. We're going to come through and pick up your yard debris. Maybe we can have people at Hood River Garbage say, hey, you can dump all the yard debris you want on this day if you're bringing it up from the neighborhoods. Anything to just help make it safer for pedestrians to walk, wheelchair access. All of these things are important for our community, and they've been ignored for 25 years. So it'd be great to get those sidewalks clear and make it so people can walk safely. So that's it.
Thank you so much for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll email you guys. Yeah, I'll email you.
Right. Our next presentation is from the Chamber of Commerce. Katie? Thank you for being patient through all our presentations and meetings this evening.
No,
We
it's
have
been
a
great.
lot on our agenda tonight.
Thank
Yeah.
Thanks, Dustin. Well, thank you, Mayor McBride and Council. I'm so happy to be here today. Katie Cadleb, 915 Roberts Drive. I'm the CEO of Visit Hood River in the Chamber of Commerce. Gosh, it's so nice to be here in person and not over Zoom. I moved to Hood River in 2013 while I was working at Mount Hood Meadows as the Director of Business Development. I accepted this role because I love our community. We have kids in the school system, and I'm truly passionate and excited about the work that I get to do, particularly all the relationships that I've gotten to build over just the past year. First, I'd like to begin with sharing the guiding principle for our efforts on behalf of visitation and the community, which is to build and sustain the quality of life for residents and businesses who call Hood River home. Here's the meat and potatoes. Tourism is the second largest revenue driver in our community. $2 million in transient lodging tax collections was budgeted for this fiscal year. 75% of that, $1.5 million, is earmarked for the city's programming through the general fund. 25% of that is earmarked by state statute to be reinvested in destination stewardship and promotion. And we're honored to be part of this excellent partnership and are committed to working with the city on careful and strategic reinvestment plans to improve and sustain the quality of life for Hood River. In addition to the TLT, Hood River County benefits from tourism through numerous other industries. And in 2019, which was our last full pre-pandemic year, visitor spending in Hood River County was over $115 million. And you can see the breakout in all the different categories. It's a significant impact in our economic system here. I'm super excited to share the accomplishments of our very small team has made in this year of recovery. Melanie Finstad is here with me, who is our visitor center manager. Operationally, we received an independent financial review resulting in no unfavorable or improvement required findings. We identified and implemented efficiencies in numerous areas, maximizing resources allocated to destination advocacy, while keeping labor costs just 22% of our total budget. We were able to build reserves of $120,000 while successfully implementing our 21-22 plan. And part of that is this positions us for additional investment in our community, which we're looking at. And I love that Councilor Rivera brought this up, but what that could look like for translating our website as well as all of our materials into Spanish. I was accepted into the Oregon Tourism Leadership Academy with other leaders in Oregon's tourism ecosystem. And I'm currently attending a 6-month Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Leadership Series facilitated by Lapido Group through Destinations International. In regards to business advocacy, this is something very exciting to me. I brought together a stable table of community partners, including Abigail Elder, as well as Jessica Mehta with her Mid-Columbia Economic Development District hat on, to build and strengthen relationships, discuss our priorities, and cooperate on common goals. We've developed a small business committee, which is comprised of board members, staff, and community leaders, led by Michelle Geidel, who's our sales and development manager, as well as Greg Price with the SBDC. We're currently developing a small business showcase for this fall with workshops for financial planning, IT assistance, marketing strategies, and more. The Chamber Ambassador Program encourages stakeholder engagement and promotes networking opportunities such as morning brews and business after hours, which we've newly called First Thursdays, because that's more fun. We work closely with MCED and the SBDC to ensure we're communicating funding and training opportunities to all of our businesses. Our special events and production and promotion have been made possible by working with Jen Gray and city staff with our team to bring our community events back, including Halloween downtown and an awesome tree lighting event with our static parade, where we, along with Mayor McBride, were able to honor our frontline workers in our community. This Friday kicks off our first Friday in the series for the next 3 months. And plans are already in the works to add an Earth Day event next year, as well as a Pride Festival. And
what festival? What kind of festival?
Pride.
Oh.
In partnership with local retailers this spring, we were able to build a Shop Local campaign, raising just under $8,000, benefiting refugees in Ukraine. And we also have been able to provide public health and safety advocacy and communications regarding COVID-19 updates, heat and smoke advisories, and water safety messaging, to name a few. Moving to destination stewardship, we consolidated services to leverage expertise and realize efficiencies. We focused on recovery management from the COVID-19 pandemic to expedite economic rebound for business owners and community members. We've established benchmarks as part of our 2022-23 fiscal year strategic plan, and we generated results, including an earned PR media effort that achieved more than $1 million in editorial value during this fiscal year, which is a 25-to-1 ratio based on the $40,000 we put into that. So what's next? Well, based on a stakeholder survey we conducted, we were able to identify 6 priorities for the coming year. Our first priority is destination stewardship. Visit Hood River is so much more than a destination marketing organization. And we can't be the only destination management organization in our community. So as stewards of the destination, we're able to utilize sustainable, responsible, and regenerative efforts to champion Hood River and the individuals and businesses who call Hood River home. Sustainability is our second priority. We strive to help build a sustainable destination through education, outreach, and advocacy. We want to position Hood River as a place worthy of respect and protection and educate consumers about how to visit respectfully, nicely, responsibly. Sorry. We want to drive responsible consumer visitation by encouraging midweek and off-peak visitation. We don't need to tell people to come here in the summer or on the weekends. We also want to attract, promote, and support group and event sales efforts. Priority 3, diversity, equity, and inclusion is a main focus for Visit Hood River. We've begun the work that needs to be done to be informed and educated by bringing people together for solutions and strategy. I've had the opportunity to meet with Councilor Rivera, and I look forward to our continued collaboration and partnership along with several other community members. We're working on messaging and tactics to not only attract diverse visitors, but to also promote the cultures, backgrounds, orientations, and more that make Hood River culturally rich. We plan to drive community initiatives and events around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and are excited to partner with the city in this regard. Priority 4 is our history and culture. The Visitor Center is located in the Hood River History Museum, which provides awesome synergy for our organizations. We're able to lean into our past to tell our story about our future and our present. Priority number 5, the community benefit. It is vitally important that we continue to wave the economic vitality and quality of life flag and as it ties to tourism. Tourism creates jobs and drives revenue. Many of our wonderful businesses, restaurants, activities, and even public amenities would not survive without tourism and tax revenue. We'll continue to promote and support local businesses and industries like architecture, art, and recreation, which are the very core of our existence. And lastly, priority number 6 is reporting and accountability. And this is something I hold myself to a high standard. We will always operate in full transparency. Our fiscal year 22-23 strategic plan is posted on the Visit Hood River website. Monthly recaps of reporting with key performance indicators are available to everyone. And I welcome ongoing opportunities for input, feedback, and suggestions. My phone number is on every email I send out, as well as this slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. You guys have been busy. Does anyone have any additional questions for Katie? Really appreciate you coming and giving a report on what you guys are doing.
I feel like I'm on people's court, but.
Just a little bit. Anything you guys? You're right.
Oh.
Hey, Katie, thanks for coming. So I know, or at least I had the understanding that you guys made a switch in your main PR firm that was helping the local firm, Blue Collar is not involved anymore with your kind of high gloss materials. I just was wondering if you could speak to that decision.
Sure. When we were, I started looking at, and that's part of my increasing my efficiencies. I looked at a lot of different ways that we could maintain consistency throughout our organization and reduce overhead. I also, in addition to this change, I also took in all of our accounts receivables in the house. So I'm no longer paying someone to do that. I asked both agencies that we were working with to give us a consolidation plan, and DVA came forward with an excellent plan that made sense for us, and that's where we are. Thank you.
Mark?
Just want to thank you for the presentation, and I'm most excited about the stable table thing and using that as a collaborative way, and I'm glad Abigail is on it and encourage you to keep finding that broad set of things that benefit both residents and visitors, because we don't want it to be competition. We want to find the things where everything mixes. So it sounds like you have a good team on that. I wasn't aware of who is on the stable table, so keep it up.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You said first Friday starts this Friday?
It does.
And are those streets going to be closed
They
as
are.
we've had before?
Thanks to Jen.
Okay, all right, great.
And we've got some music lined up, and most of the local businesses are engaged. When we started planning this, we met with several downtown businesses And John Malesko, his thought was all boats rise with the tide. And so we've invited other vendors to come down and be part of First Friday. So it isn't singularly a downtown event.
Oh, great. Cool. Yeah.
We saw
Megan?
success in that in the Hood River holidays, and I think we'll continue with our First Fridays like that as well as the holiday event.
Great.
One, thank you for being here. I think not a surprise. I'm super excited to see kind of the shift in language to destination stewardship.
Yes.
That's very cool. I'm wondering if you could do a slightly deeper dive on like benchmarks for success or what your goals are for the next year within that.
Absolutely. So we are currently in the process of finding a data collection firm, which will help us look at where people are coming from and as far as how far, and give us better ideas. We'll look at this year kind of as a benchmark year, then to start building those KPIs and what growth can look like in real time. So right now, I mean, our main source is TLT, right? So we're going to work with the city to talk about what the parking receipts look like, maybe bridge tolls and different things that we can build upon so we know where we're at and what that growth looks like. Is that helpful?
It is. I guess I'm thinking more of the benchmarks, not for a number of people, but for the like stewardship. I don't know what the metric would be, but like, how are you measuring sustainable relationships or community?
Yeah, I think that while we are building these relationships, that's going to be in the works, right? So I mean, as we're coming out of COVID and I'm able to meet with Arthur to talk about trail stewardship. I mean, it is kind of steering a cruise ship on how to get these. So we want to look at the baseline and then come up with those benchmarks. But I also don't feel like Visit Hood River can create those benchmarks alone. And so it is going to take these relationships and conversations and what that looks like for our community as a whole and not just tourism. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Tim, did you have any questions?
Just thank you for the presentation. I wish I could be there in person. And I also appreciate the change in language and your efforts to find that balance between visitors and residents. It's really important. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Gladys?
Yeah, thanks for being here, Katie. I want to really thank you for taking some of the feedback from last year and putting actionable items into place. So I appreciate all that time and energy and effort when 30% of your county identifies as Latino or Hispanic. It's so important that we have information that's tailored to them as well. So I really appreciate you doing a lot of work by being intentional with the language that you're using, being intentional by the transparency. I too am excited for First Fridays again. It's been such a long time. Excited for Stable Table. I guess the only other comment or recommendation is, how do we connect you with Nubia or other folks to market that First Fridays are happening again? And how do we make sure that we are including other community members' awareness so that they too feel that they are welcomed to downtown for First Fridays?
That's a great feedback. I actually had reached out to Nubia about something completely separate last week. So you and I can follow up on that. And, yeah, great feedback.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I know our next item is a public hearing, but it is after 8. We've been going at it for 2 hours. So I think let's take a 5-minute recess. And we have people to speak to the next one, but we've been kind of at it for a long time. So 5 minutes. Thank you. This is the time scheduled for the public hearing on the annexation by K2 Page LLC, file number 202209. The applicant's parcel is located east of the intersection of Frankton Road and Carr Drive. And other properties affected by this annexation are located on the north side of Carr Drive. The affected parcels currently are zoned urban low-density residential, urban growth area, UR1, and will be designated urban low-density residential R1 following annexation. A quorum of the council is present. I will now ask all councilors to disclose any ex parte contacts of interest and bias in this manner. Eric?
I wasn't sure exactly where this property was until during the break, I asked Kevin. I'm not aware of any. So I mean, it's possible that I talked to somebody about it. I'm meaning it just, I might know a property owner in this area is what I'm trying to say. I haven't talked to anybody about it, but not that I recall.
Okay. Mark?
None.
Megan?
Two different disclosures. The one you've all heard before, I work for Farmers Irrigation District. I did review this application with my work hat on. But there is no financial benefit to me or the district for the annexation. And there's no information I got that isn't already in the materials. There's no bias related to that. And then also I had been working with Ron Kuahara as I've been looking for a house. But we have not discussed this property. There is no financial benefit. So also no bias or ex parte contact.
All right. Gladys?
None for me.
And Tim?
None for me, Mayor.
Okay. And myself, my husband's a real estate agent. I suppose if it doesn't have to do with the annexation, but if it was subdivided and listed, it's possible he could make some money on it. But at this point, it's just an annexation. The properties aren't listed. Don't even know if they will be. But I just need to disclose he's a real estate agent. And I know where the property is. It previously was owned by my sister-in-law. Right. Would anyone in the audience, does anyone in the audience want to question any counselor on any disclosure, ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, or otherwise challenge the participation of any member of council? Okay. No. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. For audience members watching the video conference in Zoom, please use the raise hand feature in the webinar controls if you wish to speak. For audience members listening by phone, please use the following commands via your phone's dial pad. *9 will raise your hand if you wish to speak, and *6 to toggle for mute and unmute. Is there anyone that wants to challenge any counselor that's on, any member of the audience that is online that wants to challenge any counselor? Okay, Jen sees none. All right. Would any counselor like to make a motion to disqualify any other counselor from hearing this application? Okay. In tonight's hearing, we'll use the following order of presentation. First, we'll begin with a staff report in which staff will describe the application before us. Secondly, the applicants may present testimony. Third, anyone in favor of the proposal may testify. And fourth, opponents of the proposal may present testimony. If there is opponent testimony, applicants then have an opportunity to present final rebuttal. The applicants have the last word because an applicant has the burden of proof of compliance with the mandatory approval criteria. After that, we will check to see if staff has any parting comments following the conclusion of all public testimony. Finally, after everyone interested in these matters has had a chance to testify, we will close the record, deliberate, and render a decision tonight. Here are some of the basic rules for presenting testimony. Only present testimony in the order I just recited and do so only at the podium in front of the table unless you're watching or listening by Zoom. Begin with your name and mailing address. Please limit your testimony to the substantive issues and the principal approval standards in ORS 222 and Hood River Municipal Code 17.15. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence with sufficient specificity to allow us or the parties to respond to the issue will preclude an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow us to respond to the issue will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Finally, we may set time limits on the presentation of testimony tonight, although there may be no limitations on written argument that may be submitted. Let's go ahead and have the staff report first. I think we have 2 people on Zoom that would like to testify. Is that one, just one? And then we have one here. I think you could go up to 5 minutes each if you need it. If you don't need 5 minutes, that's fine. So we'll go ahead and have the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor McBride and councilors. The application before council tonight is for annexation of property into the city limits. The applicants also submitted an application for a 5-lot subdivision. These applications have been processed concurrently in accordance with procedures for quasi-judicial actions. The city's annexation process requires that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council and for the council to make a decision on the annexation. The Planning Commission reviewed both applications in a public hearing on June 6, 2022, and approved the subdivision subject to conditions of approval and forwarded a recommendation of approval of annexation to the City Council. All the materials for tonight's hearing are in council packet number 2, including a cover sheet, ordinance 2068, with a map of the area to be annexed and the Planning Commission's decision on the subdivision, as well as draft minutes from the Planning Commission's hearing. The applicable criteria for the annexation include Hood River Municipal Code section 1709-040 quasi-judicial actions and chapter 1715 annexation policy. In addition, the annexation must be consistent with Oregon Revised Statutes section 222.111 through 222.183, annexation of contiguous territory. The annexation is proposed by K2 Paged LLC to obtain sanitary sewer from the city to serve homes on the proposed lots. This is consistent with Resolution 2016-25, which requires property to be annexed before extending or allowing connection to the city's sewer system. In order to qualify for annexation, property must be contiguous to the city limits. In this case, the property to be annexed include the applicant's 1.25 acre parcel, which is contiguous to the city limits along its eastern boundary, as well as 5 lots from the Sunburst Valley subdivision and the existing Car Drive right-of-way, together totaling approximately 2.43 acres. The privately owned properties that are subject to the annexation include 3N, 10 East, 34A tax lots 4300, 4301, 4302, 4303, 4304, and 4400. A map of the annexation territory is attached to Ordinance 2068 as Exhibit A that's found on page 7 of tonight's council packet number 2. As noted earlier by Mayor McBride, all affected properties currently are zoned urban low-density residential in the urban growth area, and they will remain urban low-density residential R1 following annexation. All property affected by the annexation will be withdrawn from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District and will remain in the Ice Fountain Water District and Farmers Irrigation District. The applicant submitted consent to annexation agreements that were signed by previous owners of the affected properties in order to demonstrate conformance with a method of annexation under state law that is known as the triple majority. This is detailed in ORS 222.170 sub 1, which states the legislative body of the city need not call or hold an election in any contiguous territory proposed to be annexed if more than half of the owners of land in the territory, who also own more than half of land in the contiguous territory and of real property therein, representing more than half of the assessed value of all property in the contiguous territory, consent in writing to the annexation of their land. Attachment A1D of the Planning Commission's final order details the consent to annexation agreements that are being relied upon. You can find those beginning on page 97 of council packet number 2. The applicant also submitted a worksheet, attachment A1B of the final order, that summarizes how the annexation agreements demonstrate consistency with state statute. You can find those beginning on page 93 of council packet number 2. Based on the evidence submitted by the applicant and summarized in the final order, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation of approval of the annexation to council. In order to ensure consistency with city annexation policy and city development standards, conditions of approval require the applicant to execute a contractually binding annexation agreement before council approves the ordinance annexing the land that is subject of this application. That is, prior to the second reading of the ordinance. The annexation agreement was prepared with the assistance of the city attorney and provided the applicant in advance of tonight's hearing. The agreement explains the requirements for right-of-way dedication, public and private improvements consistent with the findings and conditions of approval in the Planning Commission's decision. The Planning Commission's approval is contingent upon approval and completion of this annexation. I believe a member of the applicant's engineering team is here tonight to present information and respond to questions. We also have talked about, we've got a couple of audience members who would like to testify. With that, are there any questions of staff before we get into testimony?
Any questions from Chairman Gladys? Just procedural at this point.
None from me, Mayor.
No questions for me.
Okay, thanks. All right. No questions. All right. So we will start with the applicant's testimony.
Yes, hello. This is Austin Bell, and I'm with Bell Design Company out of Bingen, Washington. We're representing the K2 Page LLC in this. And yeah, basically everything that staff just presented is in line with our understanding. And we've submitted the application, went through the Planning Commission, and are eager to have approval tonight if that's what you would do. We really have no comments other than what staff presented, but we're available for questions. CJ and Jesse Page are also on. They don't really have anything prepared to say, but they're available. And that's kind of all we have in regards to our comments on this.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience, or the applicants, I guess, that you said they're online? If you would like to present testimony in favor of the application, you can.
They hadn't planned to say anything unless
They hadn't planned on. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give them an opportunity if they
Yes.
wanted an opportunity to speak.
Excellent.
All right. So next, anyone that is opposing the application would be next. And then if you, even if you don't oppose it, or if you just have comments about it, you can be in this round too. So we'll go with the people that have signed up that are here in person first. So we have Brandon Johnson.
Yes.
Is that you?
That's me.
Okay, come on up here so we can hear you so the people can hear you on the recorder. And you are at 3931 Blackberry?
That's correct.
Okay.
That property is just to the north adjoining the Bronco Meadows
Okay.
property.
So you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. And Chairman was kind enough to come and chat with me a little bit when I walked in about this. And I understand that this is more of an annexation meeting, which is fine, but I also, this is new environment for me. I wanted to say a couple of things that are concerning me for planning basically, but I wanted to put it out so people know that there is a concern through the neighborhood off of Blackberry. So there's a drainage problem on the east side and the west side of the Bronco Meadows property. I have documentation showing that there streams of water run above ground in a storm cycle. It's used to be just during a storm cycle, a big storm cycle where there'd be over an inch of rain in a 24-hour period. The flooding on my property from the south would come. And now with the development to the south over the years, that it only takes 3/4 of an inch in a 24-hour period, measured by a weather station that I have on my property, that there will be streams of water running down. This past winter, when we had the snow and then we had to warm up, there was a stream of water that's running on top of cut blackberries that were mowed down. And it comes onto my property, and there's a low spot where it pools, and we'll get a puddle 2 to 4 inches deep at times. And then as it starts to drain, it will drain down to the north, and it will hit another low spot on my property just before Blackberry Drive. And then it just seems to get worse and worse, and maybe a problem of that water continuing onto Blackberry Drive onto the next property. And that has happened over on the west side. As the water comes off of that property, and most of it is underground, and comes down on my property where there's a wet spot year round, never dries up. Even last year in our hot spill, there was groundwater in this area and never dried up. And that water will come down into my driveway and flood it and continue to the next property to the north and flood that driveway, road, and his yard. And I just wanted to make sure that the developers are aware of this, and that really would like it addressed at some point. And like I say, there may be other ways to do this. Kevin would kind of tell me that there were some ways and that I could contact him and talk to him. But I would just like the developers to be aware that that problem is there, and it should be remediated before or during their development. And it's just a thing that a good neighbor would do. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for putting that information out there.
Pardon me?
Thank you for putting that information out there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And now we have one person online, is that right?
Yeah, Jackie.
Okay, Jackie?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jackie. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. And thank you, Brandy, for your comments. I'm the developer of Willow Ponds adjacent to the said property on Car Drive, permit number 2022-09. And I'd like to make a few comments regarding the wetlands and the drainage, as Brandy just spoke of. First, I'd like to express my support for the project, and happy that CJ and Jesse and Ron are doing the project, knowing they'll do well on that piece. On April 13th, 2022, I emailed a letter to city planning, county planning, neighboring properties, and the engineer Dev Bal and developer Ron Kuwahara regarding excessive drainage both onto the subject site and off the site. I mentioned the same concerns at the November 19th, 2021 neighborhood meeting, as did others. The drainage, the drainage site does not seem, the application does not seem to reflect these drainage issues in the comments or the findings, and how they're going to remedy this issue that Brandy also spoke of. Over the last 6+ years, we have seen an increase of flow off the said parcel, which eventually floods northwards onto Brandy Johnson's property, Cindy Thiem and Jim Kane's property, and then moves eastward to Willow Ponds into our existing wetlands. This then flows through several properties under several driveways, and then this drainage has increased each year and may impact these wetlands, the properties, the roads northwards, as well as the city storm sewer north of May Street. On page 43, 1608-020, number 8, there's a mention of an existing ditch along the east property line. And it recommends in the findings that an open stormwater channel on the east side of the site be provided and a culvert shall be provided beneath Car Drive to convey to this existing channel. However, after years of watching this water flow, and I do have documentation of years of it, this channel does not exist on the south portion of the east side of the property and only slightly exists near the south portion. This drainage enters the property to the south near a cluster of trees some 50 feet east of the so-called existing east ditch and floods the said parcel, and then seems to connect with water flowing from the existing car development, where it picks up more flow and floods northwest to the properties on Blackberry Drive and Willow Ponds. Both photos and videos of the existing drainage is available, and as Brandy said, he has documentation further. We have offered this information to the engineers to assist in the stormwater management plan, so as not to affect, as it does now, to the properties in the north and northeast. The stormwater system should also reflect all impervious surfaces, including roadways, driveways, patios, overhangs, so the excessive water, like the past development on Car Drive, does not cause further damage northwards. As we've seen in the house built on county property directly south of this said parcel, the permits did not require them to do any remedial work to collect their additional stormwater. Even though they built the building on an existing footprint, their roofs are larger, their deck surfaces are larger, and soon to be impervious surfaces such as parking, patios, etc. will also be larger. However, that water is going into a ditch and going on to this said property. In a letter dated February 2nd, 2022, attachment I, page 212, city planning to engineer Austin Bell communicated that a wetland inventory would not be needed to be done due to the fact that nothing shows in the 2003 wetland inventory. The comment reads, although we know there are wetlands nearby, the city's 2003 local wetland inventory does not depict wetlands on this site. However, Willow Ponds would not have had any wetlands in the inventory as well if we had not been required to do a wetland study. New wetlands were discovered in 2015 and some other wetlands no longer exist. Drainage and wetlands on the west side can change, as we have seen in our own development, and therefore any new property seeking development should have to require a wetland delineation. Impacts to properties and other wetlands in and around Willow Ponds could have a significant impact on existing wetlands currently in the inventory. Some wetland plants, such as sedge, carex, and blackberry, do suggest that wetlands may exist. However, soil samples would determine if there were wetlands at all. This again would have to be reflected in the stormwater management plan. Some of this water could be created by underground drain tiles or springs, as Brandy mentioned, water that's coming up to the surface on his west side of the property. Goal 6 findings state that the application will not affect in any way the air, water, and land resources. Therefore, this goal is met. I would argue, as mentioned above, that water and land resources could be affected if undetected wetlands are not inventoried and thus paid over and not considered in the stormwater calculations, again affecting properties to the north and northeast, as has happened in the past development of Car Drive when existing wetlands were paved over and not designed to the forefront of the development process. The intentions of my comments today is to make sure that existing and potential additional waters and wetlands are considered in this application, designed into the development as not to affect those northwards and eastwards onto our property. It is much harder to remedy these excessive drainage issues after the project is underway. I would hope you as the governing body will request the engineers to do the due diligence in making sure potential harm does not have to be remedied later down the road and is added to the subjects prior to approval. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate your comments. Do we have anyone else for comment? Okay. All right. So we've had a couple comments. And so I think next would be a rebuttal. So the applicant, Austin Bell, do you have any comments regarding water, wetlands and water?
Thank you. Yeah, we've,
especially,
I believe our engineers spoke both with Jackie as well as some property owners to the north. And in the planning commission approval or preliminary approval, of course, requires stormwater for construction, any new road construction, as well as the, any proposed impervious or anticipated impervious areas for the lots. And so part of that, of course, is no new increase. There is the issue of the water that just comes onto the lot as everything, of course, flows to the north. And that'll have to be dealt with as well in some way. And so, yeah, that does affect. And I know we have in our plan there on the west side, of course, this has to do with the proposed subdivision. There is stormwater control on the east side of the property, but there is also, as she mentions, staff talked about allowing the water that's coming onto our property to flow through. So that probably does need to be addressed. But the main things, we would not allow any new or increased stormwater. There probably is going to have to be some kind of team effort to figure out what to do with all this water as it comes from the south through this property onto the next property, on the next property. And so definitely a conversation. I know their engineers I don't have any engineers with me tonight, but they've had that discussion. I'm the land surveyor for Bell Design. And I know we've met with neighbors, as well as, Ron has talked with the neighbors, Ron Kurahara, who's assisting the pages or the K2 Page LLC on this. So I know that in the subdivision process that will be addressed. I'm not sure if the annexation process addresses that so much as the development process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Staff, do you have any parting comments?
Thank you, Mayor McBride and councilors. Thank you, Austin, for your assistance there answering those questions. I just would point out that with respect to wetlands, stormwater, these issues are related more so to the subdivision development than to the annexation. The proposal that we saw from Bell Design does include a utility plan that depicts the stormwater facility that Austin just mentioned, as well as individual spaces on each of the lots that are intended to accommodate stormwater infiltration, I believe. Also, I'll just point out that some conditions of approval in the final order, you'll find these on pages 69 to 70. 14.I requires a stormwater management plan. 14.J talks a bit more about accommodating stormwater off of Carr Drive specifically in the stormwater management plan. And 14.K addresses grading and drainage and specifies there is to be no adverse effect on neighboring property owners. So these are engineering issues that the city engineer is going to work with the Bell Design team on addressing. And but I certainly appreciate the concerns that have been raised by Brandy and by Jackie. And I guess I'm more in the zoning realm of things. I can't give you specific solutions to those problems. But again, city engineering team will be working with the applicant. And that's all I've got for you.
Okay, great, thanks. So I think that is all we have for testimony this evening. So
Could I just ask some really basic?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go questions for,
I believe I know the answers. These are really easy, but I just want to not operate with bad information in my mind. So when you first spoke, you mentioned that the 1.25 acres is contiguous, but so is the whole thing's contiguous, right? Not just that part.
The applicant's parcel is physically contiguous to the city limits boundary along its eastern property line, and the additional properties are contiguous to it. So collectively, yeah, it is all contiguous to the city limits.
Great. And then we're only deciding the annexation. We're not approving the subdivision.
That's correct. Just focused on the annexation tonight and the annexation criteria.
and I'm 99% sure of this one, this might be to Mr. Bell, but you said the pages were on the line. They're the applicants, they're supportive, they're not on the line, not speaking because they're against it, right?
Oh, correct. They are the owners, and they just didn't have anything to add beyond what we had. Looks like they're on.
I thought page was spelled differently for some reason.
No, we're here. We're just listening. We're for it.
Okay. I just didn't want to misunderstand that there was someone against it somehow. Did not speak. Thank you.
No, and we used to live on Blackberry Drive, so we know the area really well.
So following Eric's thing of, I think I know the answer and I just want to confirm, but there are conditions of approval for stormwater management plan and all of these things, and that is related to the subdivision. The annexation doesn't have any criteria specific to that sort of wetlands, drainage, stormwater.
Correct.
Question, or?
The annexation criteria don't address stormwater specifically, but we do have a condition of approval that is associated with annexation that asks for the applicant to sign an annexation agreement that really binds the conditions of approval from the Planning Commission's decision, which address things like stormwater, right-of-way dedication, street improvements, etc.
Okay, so from your opinion, the current conditions of approval should already be addressing the concerns of the folks we heard?
This should be addressing the concerns. I think as we heard from the applicant's representative tonight, it's going to take a team effort to address the problem. It's a challenge given some of the water that comes from upstream that needs to be collected as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So can I jump in real quick, Mayor? This is
Yeah.
Tim.
So we're not discussing this yet, though. I just want to make sure we're just going to ask questions of staff right now.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Kevin, yeah, I think a lot of your points and the conditions relate to stormwater management. But does it address the wetlands issue that Jackie brought up?
The decision doesn't really get at the wetlands issue because the property was not in or is not in the city's local wetland inventory. Wetlands have not been addressed specifically in the findings or the conditions. We've got partners at the Department of State Lands, and we'll send them a copy of the notice of decision, and they will determine if there's anything additional that the applicant needs to do with respect to wetland analysis.
So that would fall into their court and not ours. We could not require a wetland inventory.
I think that we could require a wetland inventory. It was not addressed in the Planning Commission's decision, which is in your packet tonight, perhaps could be addressed in the context of the annexation agreement, though, by council. And I think we've got the city attorney, Dan Cairns, with us tonight, and he might be able to touch on that a bit as well.
Well, I see them as two distinct issues. I mean, stormwater management is passing the water that comes down in a storm through your property to another property. Certainly. Or to the cities, but a wetland that actually percolates water, from groundwater or wherever it comes from to another property is that's a different animal than the stormwater.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I'm just pointing that out.
And let's, Dan, if you want to stay on, I think we're close to having all our questions, and then you can help maybe clarify on that one.
Sure.
When we get to deliberations. Other clarifying questions for Kevin? Mark has one. Go ahead.
And I think I'm asking the same thing. To my knowledge, we're talking about the annexation process, and any wetlands and stormwater stuff is all part of the engineering that would come into play with the application for development, not related to annexation.
Not directly related to annexation. However, the annexation decision includes kind of this crosswalk with this annexation agreement that specifies the need for the applicant to develop the property in a manner that's consistent with the Planning Commission's findings that don't reference wetlands currently. They do address stormwater and other utilities and infrastructure issues. So if the council wants to get at this wetland issue more closely, we can talk to the city attorney about that and in the context of feasibility of inclusion of that issue in the annexation agreement.
It's the engineering standards that go beyond specific line item. And
yeah, the city engineering standards are not codified, right? There's a separate set of engineering standards, and they don't address wetlands specifically. They do address stormwater issues.
I think we have Dan up, and we could help if you want some clarification on this as well.
Yeah, let's just see if there's more questions for staff, anything additional besides the wetland / stormwater procedural or. Okay, let's go ahead and Dan, give us some information about what we can and cannot do when it comes to wetlands. I think the stormwater we've kind of got figured out potentially, but.
Sure. On as Kevin said, these are development issues. My recommendation is that, well, my observation is you can't regulate this or any aspect of its development until you annex it. The city does not really regulate wetlands. It has a wetland inventory and it has some pretty modest regulation of those as a Goal 5 resource. I haven't really heard of an annexation condition that would require an inventory, which is a Goal 5 process. It's quite elaborate and it's kind of beyond the scope of this annexation or even the development. This development, like anyone else in Oregon, is subject to state and federal law. And the state and federal governments, they regulate jurisdictional wetlands. And so maybe what Tim was referring to is a delineation to develop this, to demonstrate compliance with state and federal wetland regulations. This developer is going to have to delineate any wetlands on the property. And that's something that we don't typically deal with in the context of annexation, certainly. But rest assured that there are a whole host of development regulations that this project is going to be subject to that are very specific. Stormwater requirements are, engineering standards and best practices are spelled out in painful detail in the city's stormwater requirements. And this development is not going to elude those, but it's not going to be subject to them unless it's annexed first.
So, so the delineation, the state will require a wetland delineation, or will they only require it if they have it in some kind of a map that happened some years ago? Do you know?
They'll have to, I don't know for sure how it's going to be addressed in this particular development, but typically if there are any wetlands on site, they have to be delineated now by a suitably qualified wetland consultant. That delineation will be reviewed by DSL and the Army Corps under a joint permit program. And that's how wetlands are regulated in this state by and large.
Okay. More questions for Dan?
You think it's a question versus a deliberation comment is we want to make sure that we're not providing a path to skip delineation steps by doing the annexation. Can you confirm that they are in fact separate things, that the annexation is just the annexation and then there's all these other things that require any future development to address wetlands and stormwater?
Is that to me?
Real quickly, I'll jump in. Dan, you can follow if I miss something. But yeah, these are separate issues. The Annexation is limited to a set of criteria that I explained earlier. And once we get into the detailed engineering during the subdivision review with the engineering department, we'll look at other issues, including consistency with city standards, engineering requirements. The city's wetland inventory, again, didn't show wetlands on this site. So I can't, as a staff person, just decide I want to apply the regs that the city has in the code. But what I can do is send a notice to the Department of State Land saying development has been approved here. Please be aware of it. We've had some issues raised by neighbors, and the DSL can make a determination on whether or not a delineation is going to be required.
And I can jump into for Dan, the annexation of the property or lack thereof will not change DSL regulations. So your annexation of this property would not change anything regarding DSL standing in terms of the development or regulation of wetlands.
That's right. And typically, the most condition that I've seen in these instances is a general requirement that all state and federal permits that are required be obtained.
Megan?
To that point, I mean, I know you can explicitly write that out, but certainly my understanding is even if that's not written as a condition, that is a fact, because no city approval can override state or federal law.
Right.
Provide a permit. Okay.
All right, and if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and now we will deliberate. All right. I think we've got our questions answered about the water. Other issues with the annexation or? Are you good?
My review of the materials, it seems like the applicant has satisfied the applicable criteria, so I'm in support of the measure or of the annexation.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, same. I think that we've talked about these other issues and that they're outside the annexation part, so I'm clean.
Megan?
I agree. I think the concerns brought up have other mechanisms appropriately to address them, either through the development criteria or through state agency regulations. And outside of that, I think the materials covered all of the criteria, and this annexation application has met them.
Tim?
Yeah, I agree with that. Everything seems to be in order. I would appreciate it if Kevin would follow through on his thought that he could just notify DSL of the concerns of the neighbors, and that I think that would be helpful. But I don't. I think that the annexation is clean.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Gladys?
Yeah, I'm happy to support this annexation.
All right, I also support the annexation. We need more places that we can put homes. And I'm glad some more people are going to be doing that. There's a motion on page 27 of our packet.
I move that the subject property is annexed into the city and withdrawn from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, consistent with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Do we do this as two separate motions?
We need two separate motions, Jen, or we can just add. But she needs to move that we're going to read it. Yeah, go ahead and do that one too.
At the same time?
Well, we can go ahead and vote. Let's just go ahead and vote on this one. So if I have a motion to that the subject property is annexed into the city and withdrawn from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, consistent with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
Marcus seconded. Any more discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Nays? Abstentions?
Okay, and then we're moving this to city recorder, or we're reading by first time? I can't talk. Okay, I move, thank you, Jen. I move that we read ordinance number 2068 for the first time by title only under city recorder.
Second that as well.
I have a motion by Megan and a second by Mark that we move to read ordinance 2068 for the first time only by title only by the city recorder. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Nays or abstentions? All right. Let's see. We will, do we have any, we'll open the work session. Anything for the work session, additions or corrections?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Close the work session, adjourn the work session. We'll go into regular council meeting. Any additions or corrections?
There are none.
All right. We have a consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that anyone either has questions on or needs to recuse themselves on? Okay.
I will move, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Megan's made a motion to approve the consent agenda and Tim has seconded that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nays? Abstentions? Chair votes aye. Nothing under regular business. City recorder.
Your Honor, I'd entertain a motion for the first reading of ordinance 2068 by title only.
So moved.
Megan so moved the reading of ordinance 2068
Second.
and Mark has seconded that.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Haney,
Aye.
Counselor Saunders,
Yes.
Counselor Cunahan,
Aye.
Counselor Zandmiller,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Ordinance 2068, an ordinance proclaiming annexation of certain contiguous territory located with the city's urban growth boundary and withdrawing the same territory from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, K2 Page LLC, Card Drive.
Thank you, Jen. Right. Mayor call. Abigail and I we kind of split the day last week. We went to the Dalles and there was a homeless summit. And they had, she attended the morning session and I was in the afternoon. And it was a great session. There was a lot of people. There's a lot of work being done. Sheriff McGill was there that came and presented that Eric brought here at our last meeting. And they had a whole panel on mental health and substance abuse and what's going on in that department. So it was a very, a lot of the things we knew about, but there's just a lot of momentum with a lot of things going on right now with that. So it was definitely helpful. I attended the first group meeting of the League of Oregon Cities, or excuse me, Oregon Mayors Association through the League of Oregon Cities, of small and large mayors of towns all over the state and regarding homelessness. And we basically recognize that the homelessness and the mental health and substance abuse, it's all wrapped up into one. And so that was just our first meeting to figure out kind of what our agenda will be. We've got four or five more meetings planned, and League of Oregon Cities is taking notes and putting things together for us. And so I'll just keep you guys informed on what's going on. Yep, I think we have another meeting in about 3 weeks. So that was really interesting. Yeah. And Congressman Blumenauer, I believe is going to be here tomorrow at the library. I think at 5, let me look here. At 5:30. So I'm going to try and attend that tomorrow. See if there's anything else I'm attending. No, I think that's the only thing this week. Council call. Eric?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Mark?
I as well have nothing bad.
Nothing bad. Good.
No, nothing to add.
Nothing to add. I was going to say
bad.
nothing bad. Oh, good. Nothing bad. Megan?
Nothing this week.
Gladys?
Yeah, I want to thank folks that attended the Pride Festival / parade that took place out in Wasco County yesterday. It was nice to see folks supporting the LGBTQI community. And I also just wanted to touch that last week, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe versus Wade, which allows states to ban abortion. This marked a historical day in healthcare because abortion is healthcare. It is a human right. I, like many other women here in the country, am angry, I'm sad, and I'm devastated that this will just disproportionately impact BIPOC, low income, rural communities, and simply those without resources or financial means to travel for access. And these are folks that are already facing systemic health inequities. What do you do during this time? Well, you use that channel, that frustration, that anger that you feel, and you channel it towards actionable items such as donating to organizations like Planned Parenthood that support many others and just support access overall. Who you vote for really does matter. So if you were someone that, for whatever reason, didn't vote in this last election, I welcome you to do that this coming fall, and that you participate in all elections. Who we vote for matters. Our elected officials are supposed to fight for us and not against us. So I just wanted to mention that it's a devastating time, but in all of this, we've learned that through collaboration and that together, collaboratively, we can achieve successful outcomes. And so all those emotions that you're feeling, channel them into actionable items to create systemic change.
Thank you, Gladys. Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I definitely agree with all of what Gladys said, but nothing else from me.
All right. We have an executive session this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go into executive session. So I'm going to read this script. The City Council will now meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statutes 192.6601I to review and evaluate pursuant to standards, criteria, and policy directives adopted by the governing body, the employment-related performance of the chief executive officer of any public body, a public officer, employee, or staff member. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made nor final action taken in executive session. The executive session is anticipated to last 20 minutes.
What an optimist.
I am. At the end of the executive session, the City Council meeting will be adjourned and no action will be taken. We will now discontinue the live feed and recording. So Jen's going to keep us hooked up to Gladys and Tim, but she's going to stick around. Okay. Thanks, Abigail. Appreciate you filling that out.